How's it going, everybody? This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. So, you can ask me anything about politics that you like. You can ask me anything. No question is too complicated or simple. I am not here to make fun of people for not knowing things. I am just here to answer your good faith questions about politics. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know that the information environments that we are all living in can be very confusing as far as like what's real, who can you trust, and shit like that. So I like to make myself available to people to answer their questions about politics. And, there's not going to be any roasting or debating or anything like that. This isn't one of those shows where I call people up and then they tell me why they're Republican and then I tell them why they're stupid. This is not that show. This show is I don't care who you voted for. If you got a question about politics, put it in the chat. If you're a MAGA, if you're a progressive, if you're a centrist, like put it in the chat, man, and I will answer it as long as the question in good faith. Sometimes I get a little spicy with people if they get a little spicy with me in the chat, but I'm trying my best to not do that. Partysaurus says, I am terrified. I am also terrified, Partysaurus. But what we can do with that fear is use it to motivate us to actually do work to try to solve the problem. And if you got questions about how you do that work, then I'm a great resource for that because I've done a lot of this work. And so there you go. Cuz808 says, what are your thoughts on Israel? The Israeli government is currently under the purview of extreme right-wing ideologues who do not have any respect for the human rights of the people who are living in the countries around them. I think that it would benefit the citizens of Israel if they had people who were not like Netanyahu in charge. Also, the Netanyahu government has been proven to be guilty of war crimes, and so we should not be sending them any money or weapons. That is, Jeff says, we solved it, we got rid of Biden. No, what Trump is doing is worse than what Biden did, Jeff. So, no, that is not solving it whatsoever. Karen Ann says, terrified. I am also terrified, Karen Ann. But we can use that emotion to motivate us and project us forward to do the kind of work that helps correct all the shit that is going wrong during the Trump administration. So if you got questions about that, let me know, and I'm happy to put that information out into the ether. We can get more people involved in this fight. The more people that do this work, the less work that people like us have to do. Andre says, "May I ask your background, bro?" I mean, what do you mean by that? Do you want like my racial background, my educational background? All right, DJ, more breaks, please. Man, I hope you're having a good week. I go on vacation like 3 days in Mexico. I don't think I'm fucking coming back. Blatant Briggles, I don't know I can live in this country anymore. Yeah, DJ Moore, I'm with you, man. Like, I'm here. I'm part of the fight, But yeah, all if all things were if things were a little bit different, I might be getting on a plane myself. And that is very funny. Trains and automobiles. Andre says, my political background. Yeah, sure. I didn't know anything about politics when I was growing up. I always felt like kind of a dunce with politics, and I was always worried about if I ask this, people are going to think I'm stupid. And a couple of times I did ask a question that my friends told me, Jarrett, that was a stupid question that you just asked. Some of them didn't say that with their words, some of them just said it with their glances and things like that. But I started becoming more interested in politics as I was making my way in the world, trying to earn a living, trying to have a good life, and just kind of looking around and seeing like it seems like these systems are kind of like built in a way to keep people like me from being able to afford a home or go on vacation and shit like that. And the more I worked, I waited tables for like 12 years, the more I found myself coming into contact with shit like this, where I was like, God damn, like this isn't fair. This shit is really, really not fair. And we are all working our asses off while these fucking billionaires are, just eating caviar and lobster 3 meals a day, taking fucking private jets to one of their 10 mega mansions. And so, yeah, that paired with starting to learn a little bit more about politics kind of like fueled my my interest in it. And I've just become the kind of person that reads about what's going on in the country and the government every day. You know. Alrighty, let's see here. Thank you, Andre. Appreciate you. Cruise808 says, "What are your thoughts on Trump's new tariff deal with China?" I think it's amazing. It's not really a new tariff deal, Cruz. Andre, it's fine, Andre. Don't worry about it. Um, let's see here. Yeah, I mean, is an anthropology degree worthless? I'm an undergrad and I want to go to law school. I don't actually know about that, cuz. So, cuz 808, like the new tariff deal with China, it's like he didn't get anything. All he did was raise tariffs a whole bunch and then reduce them a little bit. So, like, there's still some more on there than there used to be, in addition to tariffs on other countries, like yeah, it's a bad policy. He's bad at deal making. Like, I don't really know what the substance is of this deal, quote unquote, deal with China that is like only half real. You know what I mean? Let's see here. Why Smitesism says, should taxation be considered extortion? No. Taxes is us all buying into the project of civilization. We're saying, hey, wouldn't it be great if there was a group of people that would you know put your house in water if it was on fire? Why don't we all pool our money together and we can hire people to fight fires for us? That seems like a really cool thing to do. That's what taxes is. 1970 Chevelle says, do you follow Chris Cuomo? No, I do not care for the Cuomos. Let's see here. Scrolling down to the bottom. Not so Slim Shady says, would rather Walz or Shapiro in 2028. I mean, Josh Shapiro. Ben Shapiro for a second. Yeah, both of those guys are fine. I say let them duke it out in the primary. Epic Lobster Man says, who are you and why should I care what you think? My name is Jared Berenstein. I'm a stand-up comedian, but I also know a lot about politics, so I come on here to answer people's questions about politics. And if you don't think that if that's not good enough, then you can leave. Nobody has to be here. Sir Walter says, TikTokers think I know everything about everything. No, I don't think that you know everything about everything, but I know a lot of things, and if you don't know a lot of things, you can ask me about it, and I'll try to answer it for you. We love Drank says Trump takes care of the people and what they need. Kamala was going to take care of what people want. That is not true. We love Drank. So yeah, I don't know why you think Trump is taking care of people when he is actively harming the 99% in this country. Shiver Me Timber says, what would your solution be to this new age of McCarthyism? I think in organized and activated public. The people who have the power to stop this current era of McCarthyism, they're Republicans, and they are in the bag for Donald Trump, regardless of how many laws he breaks and how many people that he hurts. And so, yeah, the only way that we can reverse that in this time is for people like you and me to do the work of political activism. And if you ever talk about the work or political activism and you're like, Jared, I don't know what that means, then ask and I will happily get into it, or send me a DM, email me through my website. I got a whole bunch of things that people can do. So let's see here. Not So Slim Shady says, do you support electoral reform? Yes, I do. Weber says, nope, Trump for 3.5 more years. Enjoy it. Okay, Weber, that's not really a question. Dan Blackroyd, Eric Lobsterman has been here before. I never forget a face. Okay, Epic Lobsterman. Yes, I am a Democrat. I don't know why you think that's a pejorative. Tyro, good to see you again. Thank you for being here. Ken says, do you think Trump will be impeached? So it is unlikely that the current impeachment hearing that is happening will result in impeachment because Republicans have a majority in the House. And in a normal world, the Republican Party would indict Donald Trump for impeachable offenses, but the Republican Party is corrupt from toe to tip, and they are either too scared of Trump or they are on board with his lawlessness and unconstitutionality. So yeah, it is very unlikely that the Republicans in Congress are going to vote to impeach Donald Trump. But the 2026 midterms are coming up, everybody, and so if you got if you're the kind of person that thinks Donald Trump should be impeached, then you should do the work of trying to get Democrats elected in 2026 because that is the only way that he's actually going to get impeached. Weber says, why would they get rid of somebody doing a good job? Trump is not doing a good job, Weber. User a bunch of numbers says, I'm glad Democrats aren't dishonest. It's funny how Elon found billions of dollars. I mean, he didn't. He's lying about all that. Ken says, do you think it'll come to a point where it'll be tried again? Yeah, I mean, there's currently a Democrat in Congress who is forcing a vote on impeachment. Soccer Dad Josh says, is media control fascist? I mean, it just depends, I don't think that it's fascist for a government to say, hey, this information that you are spreading is actively harming people. I think that maybe it would be a good idea if you didn't do that. But it is fascist to be like, hey, you're not allowed to have Democrats on your social media platform, shit like that. Colin says, would you support the Libertarian Party? Absolutely not the Libertarian Party. I just finished reading a book about the origin of the Libertarian Party, and the Libertarian Party is literally just an astroturfed political party propped up by the billionaire class to convince people that cutting taxes for them and cutting regulations for them is good for everybody. And it's complete and utter bullshit. It is just rich people being pieces of shit. Let's see here. Will we need real ID to vote in 2026? I am not sure about that. The SAVE Act, I do not believe, is actually going to pass the Senate. So I think it is unlikely that unless you live in a state that has a voter ID law, that you will then need, voter ID. But, check in with your state and your, whatever district you're living in will have more information about the voter laws. Let's see here. Jerry says the airports are in chaos and Trump's on the golf course filling up his diaper. That is accurate. J. Mark 68 says, should slavery come back? The answer is no. Epic Lobsterman says it is going to pass the Senate. This guy is clueless. LOL. You think the SAVE Act is going to pass Congress, even though they don't have a filibuster majority? Republicans don't have a filibuster majority. I doubt your ability to understand politics, Epic, if that is something you actually think. JJ said, did Trump actually just put taxes on the rich, or was my grandma lying? Your grandma was lying. So far, there isn't a tax bill that has been passed during this Trump administration. In his first administration, he cut taxes for billionaires and giant corporations by massive amounts. And there is currently a financial bill that passed the House and is going to go to the Senate now to see if it will pass. That is just tax cuts for the rich and cuts to Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. All right, scrolling down to the bottom, Weber says, America loves Trump. That is not accurate. Also, Weber, you are not asking questions, and so you are out of here. Scrolling down to the bottom, Diego Vargas, good to see you again. Do you think we'll ever have another president who will reenact the FDR policies from the 30s? I mean, we should have an updated version, Like, people, I tend to be in the camp of people that believes that Biden's 4 years in office is the closest thing that we got to FDR's New Deal in recent memory. And I thought that those things were great, like the largest investment in green energy in our nation's history, reduced medication costs, an NLRB that was actually fighting for workers and unions for the first time in forever, an FEC that was actually breaking up monopolies. Like, it was great, But yeah, if we vote for progressives and if we vote for Democrats for president, then we will get closer to an FDR style politic that actually takes care of the 99%. Than if we continue to vote for Republicans, This guy is just spamming with clown face, so that's a block. Epic Lobsterman, where are you? I just saw a comment from you. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. White Rooster says, I think we most definitely need IDs for voting. Would Kamala have been better for America rather than Trump? Yes, Kamala would have been better. That is without a doubt. So White Rooster, there is no real reason why people need an ID to vote. Your name and voter information is checked and double checked and triple checked to make sure that you're not voting in other locations. Voter fraud is extremely rare, and when it happens, it is usually Republicans voting more than once or in multiple states. So yeah, there's no need for it. Additionally, we have the information, we have the data that the Republican Party views voter ID not as something for election security, but for voter suppression. Like, they want people who would have a hard time getting an ID because they work multiple jobs or because they don't have expendable income to get an ID. They view those as the voters that they don't want, and they want those people to not be voting. They've admitted this. Like they have given speeches about how voter ID laws are going to win them elections. So, I understand that it might seem like common sense, like everyone's got an ID, like why not have an ID to vote? Seems like a pretty, simple thing to me. But this is a policy that was surgically written to disenfranchise people who generally don't vote for Republicans. And that is the reason why Republicans are championing it. And they will tell you it's election security, but again, voter fraud is extremely rare. It does not sway elections. What does sway elections is the kind of lying and cheating that the Republican Party does. Closing polling locations in Democratic areas, closing DMVs in Democratic areas so that people can't get their IDs to go vote, lying, misinformation, propaganda, accepting massive amounts of billionaire money to incept people with ideas that either convince them to vote for Republicans or don't vote at all. Eric Stein says voter fraud is way more common than people think. None of the data says that, Eric Stein. Exactly zero data says that. Colin says, are you ever concerned about politicians stealing tax money? You know, I wasn't before the Trump administration because we had inspectors general to stop things like that from happening. But now Trump has fired all those people. They have shut down all those organizations that are charged with making sure that our tax dollars get spent responsibly. And so now it is just griftapalooza. Now it is just stealing as much money from the American public as humanly possible. And that's Trump and Republicans for you, everybody. Scott Clower says, who would risk going to jail to vote? You know, a bunch of Republicans have gone to jail for voter fraud. Let's see here. Epic Lobster Man says, if you're for Trump, reply to me, Trump 2024. That's not a question, Epic Lobster Man. If you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you. But if you want to ask a question and actually be part of the conversation, like, I don't mind that you are clearly a MAGA person. Shiver Me Timbers says, do you think there is a line for Republicans for will they continue to support this lawlessness? So for some people, yes. But for most people, for like the Trump base, the answer is going to be no. If you are fully plugged into the right-wing media sphere, you are not hearing any of the terrible things that Donald Trump is doing. You are only hearing the lies that are coming out of the Trump administration. So, you know, it's like these people could literally be getting, you know, shat on their face from Trump. And the media would be telling them that the shit is coming out of Trump's butt and onto their face because of immigrants and trans kids and poor people, et cetera, et cetera. Dr. Thomas Wood says, will we ever get our government back to normal after Trump is out? Yes, if people like me and you do the work, Dr. Thomas. What is the work? Send me a DM. Bomax says, I feel like Trump's first assassination attempt was just a marketing ploy to get more votes. You know, I find that there were a lot of weird things about the assassination attempt, but until we get some hard evidence that it was planned or staged, we all have to live in the world that it was a real thing. It doesn't do anybody any good to just sort of like fuel these conspiracy theories that have no, you know, chance of changing anything. Tanner Hatch says, hey man, so how come people are talking so much shit on Trump when the last president was the worst ever? Biden was not the worst president ever. Trump is arguably, and a lot of the data suggests that he is the worst president ever. But yeah, if you want me to tell you all the great things that Biden did during his administration, I'm happy to. I have the list fucking knocking around in my noodle pretty consistent. Epic Lobster Man says, why is it okay for American colleges and Clinton to take money from them, but not a plane? So Epic Lobster Man, what you're talking about is a conspiracy theory that that American colleges and the Clintons were taking money from, I guess, the Qataris or other, you know, billionaires in other countries, and that is inaccurate. We have absolutely no data to suggest that. If there was actual evidence of that, then they would have gone to jail. The thing that happens with Democrats is that, you know, Republicans will have hearing after hearing after hearing looking for any kind of evidence, and then they find none. And so there are no consequences for Democrats not doing those things because they never find evidence of them doing those things. Epic Lobster Man. So yeah, I appreciate you actually asking a question. Maybe you could be engaging as opposed to just throwing stones at Democrats and, you know, perpetuating conspiracy theories. Epic Lobster Man, are your messages open? They are. They are open, Epic Lobster Man. Dr. Thomas Wood says, MAGA lists 2 things that Trump has done to benefit the American people as a whole. Oh, you're just asking them to, yeah. Diego Vargas says, if liberals had the majority in the court, would they overturn Citizens United? Probably, I think so. Liam says, this is MAGA country. No, it's not. Only 22% of Americans voted for Donald Trump. If you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you. I don't care if you have different opinions than me. I just want you to actually ask a question and be part of the conversation. White Rooster says, Biden wasn't one of the worst. He couldn't even speak a sentence correctly. So if you think that a person being able to speak correctly makes them a bad president, I will refer you to 99% of the shit that Donald Trump says. Man, woman, camera, you know, all that shit. But yeah, like, let's talk about all the great things that happened during the Biden administration. And honestly, you want to tell me that he was in a vegetative state the entire time and it was just his team doing those things? I don't really give a fuck. because he was the one that appointed them. He was the one that put that staff together. So, somebody's going to write a book about what Biden actually did and what he didn't do. But the fact of the matter is that the great things happened during the Biden administration. So he was a good president. Right. First president to walk the picket line. Most pro-union president since FDR. His NLRB was supporting unions and workers for the first time in generations. His FEC was breaking apart monopolies, which is good for the American consumer and for business in general. He took the Trump-caused inflation from 9% to 2.4%, the largest investment in green energy in our nation's history. Let's see here. Lowered medication costs for seniors, capped the price of insulin, capped the cost of asthma inhalers. Let's see here. The PACT Act, the CHIPS Act, the first bipartisan infrastructure bill in over a decade, the first bipartisan gun control legislation in over 2 decades. So yeah, Biden, great president, everybody. Not perfect, but pretty darn good, in my opinion. Scott Mart says, can he keep the plane for personal use afterwards? No, he cannot. Happy Lemon 123 says, how are you commemorating? I don't know what that is. So sorry. Liam says Trump is lowering medication. So he did do an executive order saying that he wants medication costs to be lower, but it actually doesn't do anything unless it is in the proper format, unless it's legislation, etc. What Biden did was actually lower healthcare costs, and then Trump issued an executive order to reverse that. So then everybody's medication costs started going up again, and then Trump just tried to write an executive order to redo what Biden did, but put it under his name instead. I have read a little bit about this, not a ton, but a little bit. And the wording of the executive order is basically non-binding. So he's trying to redo the Biden executive order, but put his name on it, but he failed. And so we're going to see if this holds up after it goes through the courts and everything like that. But even in the best case scenario, he's just going to be redoing what Biden did that he undid. Alrighty, let's see here. Patrick Schultz says, my favorite far-left activist, you motivate me more than most people. Oh, thank you, Patrick. I really appreciate that. Alrighty, Sexy Sniper Panda says, what's your message for those who think cutting their federal income taxes won't hurt their retirement? My message would be that a person in the 99% getting their taxes cut might actually help their retirement. But that is not what the Republican Party is doing. They are not cutting your taxes. They are cutting the taxes of the billionaire class. They are cutting taxes for giant corporations that are already massively profitable. And at the same time as they're doing that, they're cutting government services that people like you and me rely on, particularly in retirement. So that is what I would say to that person. All right. D.O. Galindo says, the fact that you think Biden did something is astounding. Listen, I don't know. I wasn't in his administration. I don't know if it was his team or whatever, but it happened during the Biden administration. Ergo, Biden administration, a good administration. A good 4 years of Democrats doing things for the American people. Does that make it better for you? Because whenever I bring up Biden being a good president, people always give me the fucking, he wasn't actually doing anything. He was in a vegetative state the entire time. And it's like, I don't really give a shit. You're having a semantic argument about who did what. It was his administration. He did a good job. Man from Mars says, don't you think the Democrats and Reptilicans are wings of the same bird? No, that is not accurate, Man from Mars. And all you're doing when you say that is giving cover for the Republican Party. Because when you say that all politicians are the same, or both political parties are the same, you're giving cover for the worst actors. Like, we are watching Trump do massively corrupt things. But if you say all politicians are that corrupt, then people won't get upset at Trump for being so wildly corrupt because they think, that's just everybody, that's just regular. But it's not. What the Republican Party is doing is wildly illegal and unconstitutional. What Trump is doing is wildly illegal and unconstitutional. What the right-wing Supreme Court judges are doing is wildly unethical and not based in law at all. And they are different. The Democratic Party is way better. Democratic Party politicians are way better. The Democratic platform is way better than the Republican parties. So yeah, please miss me with that both sides stuff. It is completely, what's the word I'm looking for? Inaccurate. Thank you. JJ says, I'm about to move, bro. Where are you going to move to? Moderate says, you sound incredibly biased. Well, I'm not. Lever2K says, any issues you think that could unite Republicans and Democrats? No, because part of what motivates the Republican base is convincing people that Democrats are their enemy, that poor people are their enemy, that trans kids are their enemy, that immigrants are their enemy. And so even if there was something that the population agreed on 70%, I know, crazy thinking, right? I mean, the reason why that's a joke is because there are a bunch of issues that 70% of the country agrees on, but because the Republican Party, they only exist to be weaponized against the Democratic Party, they can't agree with the Democrats on anything, or they don't have a modus operandi. They don't have a reason for existing, you know? So, yeah. Rob Smith Fishing says, please give some examples of good things that happened in the Biden administration years. I did it already, but I'll do it again. The first president to walk the picket line, an NLRB that was on the side of workers and unions for the first time in decades, the first bipartisan infrastructure bill, the first bipartisan gun control legislation, the PACT Act, which expanded health benefits for veterans, the Chips and Science Act, which brought high technology manufacturing back to the United States. He brought the inflation that was caused by the Trump administration back down from 9% to 2.4%, the largest investment in green energy in our nation's history. Medication costs were brought down. There was a lot of things that were great about it. Momo says, did Trump really try to do a Muslim ban? Yes, he did. He did in his first term. Moderate says, why is walking a picket line a good thing? I mean, it's a good for communicating support. In addition to the very legitimate and substantive support that the unions and the workers were getting from the NLRB under Biden, it's also important to use the bully pulpit of the presidency to show people that you are supporting unions. So the first president to ever walk a picket line with a union, that's fucking huge, man. That is enormous. The message is enormous there. And that sort of thing can ricochet throughout the American public if we all weren't plugged into these propaganda machines that were convincing us that Democrats are bad and Republicans are good. Dr. Thomas Woods says, how do we dispel Republican criticisms of Democrats and yet it resonates with many Americans? Dr. Thomas, that is the work. The work is talking to people in real life and making sure that they are not stuck in right-wing echo chambers and propaganda echo chambers that are convincing them either that Democrats are bad and Republicans are good, or that both parties are the same and that voting doesn't do anything. We have to do the work, and we have to do it in person. There are already great organizations who are at the forefront of this. So if you don't want to, just like talk to your friends and family and neighbors and coworkers about this shit, you can join Indivisible. You can join Run for Something. You can join Vote Save America. Like, those are all great places to do the work to counter all of this misinformation that is being perpetuated by the billionaire class in support of the Republican Party. Bombshell Beats says, so you like giving kids gender reaffirming surgeries? Nice. I don't give kids gender reaffirming surgeries. I'm not a doctor. And if they want to get them, then I think they should be able to get them, because I believe in small government. And I don't think the government should tell you what sex you have to be. Serious George Raj says, do you think AI will lead to universal basic income and therefore parties fundamentally shifting to the left? So that's not going to happen by itself, Serious George. So here's the world that the billionaire class wants. They want robots and computers to do all of the work, and then the rest of us can go fucking die. They do not care about us at all. If they have a Republican in the White House and Republican control of Congress and the judiciary, they will change the laws to make it so that everything could be AI, everything could be robots, and everybody else can just fucking go die. Like, they don't care. They don't give a shit. However, if you have a responsible administration, like a Democratic administration, who actually gives a shit about people being able to survive while all these jobs are going to AI and fucking robots, then we can put in things into our financial systems to take care of people who are, now unemployed. For example, universal basic income. But the Republican Party will never go for universal basic income because they want people to be desperate. They want you to have to work 3 jobs to get by. Monster Igmu says, are you a Democrat? Yes, I am. Greg says, can you expand on how both parties aren't the same and how voting actually matters? Sure, Greg. So let's just talk about the party platforms first, okay? The Republican Party platform is vastly different than the Democratic Party platform. And, you know, that is basically just the promise of what they will do if they get into office. Additionally, the outcomes of different administrations are vastly different depending on who is in charge. During the Biden administration, we saw a lot of work towards empowering unions and empowering workers and moving us to green, safe, clean energy, creating clean energy, green energy, safe green energy jobs in small towns that are, you know, that were being abandoned by the coal and oil industry. Versus the Trump administration, where the market crashed and inflation spiked, everybody had to go hide in their houses because of fucking COVID, you know? If you look at state by state breakdowns, states that are run by Democrats have vastly better quality of life than people that live in red states. And there's less violent crime in blue states and shit like that. There is a content creator named Nick Powers who digs into all this data that will show you there are vastly different outcomes when Democrats are in charge versus when Republicans are in charge. So if you want to dig into the numbers, check out Nick Powers on TikTok. He is probably all over the place everywhere. Lord Delta says, you are spreading all misinformation. No, I am not. Your syntax is terrible. I don't believe you're a real person, and so you are out of here. Uperlar, good to see you again. Do you think there will ever be a military coup to stop this madness? I do not believe that there will be a military coup to stop this madness. What we need to worry about is a military coup to continue this madness. Like the Trump administration is firing all of the heads of the various military branches. And they are doing that because they want to put people in those positions who will do wildly illegal and unconstitutional things if Trump asks them to. There is a, I don't know what you would call it. There is a, I forget the word for it, but it's like there's like a thing in the military where you are able to say no to a direct order if it is illegal or unconstitutional. And so they want to get rid of all the people who would say no. And that is what they're currently doing. So we got to worry about the Trump military coup, not a military coup to get rid of Trump. Josh Joseph says, sorry, doing away with corruption. That is not what Donald Trump is doing. He is doing more corruption. Spencer Stevens says, you remember when you guys said Trump would take away women's rights? What about Project 2025? Spencer, not only is Project 2025 currently being enacted by the Trump administration, but a lot of the people who worked on Project 2025, including Russ Vought, who is one of the main authors of Project 2025, are currently in the Trump administration, Spencer Stevens. So I know that you said that like sarcastically, like, where is it? But it literally is happening, Spencer Stevens. And if you're not seeing it, then I would suggest you get your news from a different source, my man. Check out the Chris Hayes podcast. He just did an interview with a guy who wrote an entire book on Project 2025 and will tell you all the things that they are currently doing that are perfectly in line with Project 2025. They've currently enacted about 2/3 of it, I think. Moderate says, so you prefer Soros? I mean, if we're comparing billionaires, yeah, a billionaire who is donating to the Democratic Party out of moral obligation because he believes that that's better for people, as opposed to a billionaire who donates to the Republican Party because it pads their own pocketbook and they're able to cut regulations so they can fucking poison our air and our water. Yeah, I think Soros is a better billionaire than a Peter Thiel or an Elon Musk or a Donald Trump or a Vladimir Putin. Absolutely. Fact of the matter is, though, that 75% of all billionaire political donations go to Republican candidates because the Republican Party platform is a giveaway to the billionaire class. Let's see here. Leona says, who had the best administration? Angel Baby US, should I flee? Serious question. I can't tell you whether or not you should flee. It's a extremely personal question. I don't know what your life situation is like. I can't tell you to upend everything and move out. But I'm not going to lie to you about how precarious of a position we're in right now. ICE is operating as a rogue agency. Check out Chris Murphy's recent speech about the lawlessness of ICE and what they have been doing. If you want like a more concise breakdown of all the different things that ICE is doing that are wildly illegal and unconstitutional and immoral. In addition to that, Trump and his fucking cronies are now trying to hire 20,000 more ICE agents. They are basically creating the brown shirts. They are creating an SS for Donald Trump. It's Schnazi shit. You know what I mean? They are monitoring people's social media who are coming into this country. So if you want to go, on vacation to Canada or some shit, when you try to come back, they're going to go through all your tweets and see if you ever said anything negative about Trump and detain you. They are suing lawyers and media channels for, telling the truth about the Trump administration. We are in a dangerous time. But if people like you and me do the work, then we can get out of this. We can survive this. But we have to do the work. That is the only way that we get out of this. Now, some people would rather just leave because, it's scary. It's really scary because if people don't do the work, then we're fucked. Then we suddenly become like Russia or North Korea or fucking Turkey, So, yeah, it is definitely something that my wife and I have talked about at length. Leona, best administration? I don't know. I don't know. Lady J says, give people a position to take advantage of others, they will do it. Yeah, I think so. Jess says, what's the work? Samantha Adams says, what is the work? Excellent question. Okay. So, Kevin, I don't know what the inflation rate is today. Okay, so what is the work? The work is a couple of things. It is doing the things that we can do as citizens, protesting, boycotting, striking. It is talking to people in real life, talking to them to convince them to vote for Democrats, to be a part of this work as well. We need to recruit people to be doing this work in addition to just convincing people to vote for Democrats. You got to talk to people in real life to make sure that they're not stuck in some sort of propaganda rabbit hole that is either convincing them to vote for Republicans or not vote at all. And then there's also like bigger things, like you can join Indivisible, you can join Run for Something, you can join Vote Save America and start donating your time and energy to them. You can find a politician that you like that is in your district and you can go try to work to get them specifically elected. But yeah, there is a ton of work out there to do and you don't need to do it all. You just have to do some so that you're taking stuff off of the plate for other people. And if we all do this work, then nobody has to do a lot of work. And if you want more information on any of this stuff, my DMs are open, guys, and you can email me through my website. Alrighty. Tyro Pillar says, if I start a petition, how many signatures do I need to get for you to write another book? Let's see here. How many petitions would it take? I'll tell you what, if you can get my follower count on all of my various social media platforms to 500K, I'll write another book. So I don't want you to sign a petition. I want you to get me, I've already got 145 just on TikTok alone, and then, spread out through my Substack and my Instagram and my Blue Sky and my Threads. If you can get that total up to 500K, then I'll write another book. JJ says, another book. What's your book called? So I wrote a book in 2016 making fun of Kellyanne Conway. I got hired by a publishing company. They said, we need a book that's like red meat for the liberal base. Somebody's going to write a book making fun of Kellyanne Conway. And so they hired me because I'm a comedian who knows a lot about politics. And I wrote the book for them. And it is a real published book. It is currently out of print because the demand has been low for it. But you can still get it. It is still available on... what do you call it? It is still available on Amazon and bookshop.org. No, don't use it. Use bookshop.org, everybody. Moderate says, I didn't think there were that many ignorant people around. I guess I was wrong. I mean, it's not about ignorance. It's about propaganda and misinformation, The Republican Party has done their best to defund education en masse across the country. So we are an uneducated population. And so when you have an uneducated population, it is a lot easier to sway them with things like conspiracy theories and misinformation and propaganda. And because they are in bed with the billionaire class, they have a lot of money available to them to fund propaganda and misinformation that gets spread throughout all the various social media channels. So yeah, I would love to just be one of those people that's like, them's is dumb, I'm's is smart. But it's not the case. It is that these algorithms are very sophisticated at pushing us towards the exact kind of propaganda that will either convince us to vote for Republicans or not vote at all. Nick Wheeler Lenz says, we're an uneducated population because of Republicans. Yeah, Republicans have been defunding education for decades. And not only that, but they have been bad-mouthing education and saying that, universities are just indoctrination centers for liberal politics and shit like that. So yeah, it is 100% the fault of Republicans. Absolutely. Loopy Lou says, or we are working 2 jobs and don't have time to pay attention. Completely agree with that. Let's see here. Uperlar says, if Trump suddenly stopped being president today, would his agenda continue on without him? Yeah, probably, but I think it would be a little messy once elections start happening again. 777 says, is true that the government sells weapons to criminals that they are fighting against? Honestly, I don't know enough about that to talk about it. Alrighty. Polar Express says, wrong. They've been defending federal funding to education and giving that funding to states. Polar Express, that is inaccurate. Let's see here. Hello, Lauren. Good to see you again. Anyone who wants to defund education wants to bring back something unmentionable. Yeah, Lady J, no arguments there. White Rooster says, but aren't most social media outlets and traditional news leaned to the left? So I would argue more leftist propaganda from the media. So that is inaccurate, White Rooster. I know that is an idea that is in the cultural zeitgeist, but all of the relevant data says that most media is either center right or far right. If we're just talking about social media specifically, social media is all owned by billionaires, and billionaires are incentivized to elect Republicans because they cut their taxes and cut regulations for their businesses. So that's number one. Number two is social media is really easy to manipulate if you have a lot of money, and billionaires do have a lot of money, and because, again, they are incentivized to elect Republicans because Republicans will cut taxes for billionaires and cut regulations for their businesses, then they are going to use their money to spread all of this information all over the place. Now, you can see this in this country and in other countries. Like, they have data on this, that right-wing propaganda spikes before elections. It's currently happening in Romania right now, but this happened during Brexit, this happened during the French election, this happened during the German election as well. Yeah, right-wing media spheres infiltrate social media thanks to cash infusions by the billionaire class. Now, as far as the mainstream media is concerned, a lot of mainstream outlets will water down their criticisms of the Republican Party because they want to appear as unbiased as humanly possible. So the net effect of all of their headlines and reporting tends to be more centrist, center-right. So yeah, I hope that you took that to heart, White Rooster. It seems like we are, ideologically not aligned, but I hope that you are taking the things that I'm saying in good faith, and maybe, check out some other information besides the things that you are currently operating under. Patrick Schultz says, what if everybody subscribes to your Patreon? I mean, let's see here. How many people would I need? If you could get me like 1,000 Patreon subscribers, then yeah, I'll write another book. If you can get 1,000 new Patreon subscribers, Patrick. Let's see here. Alrighty, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Andrew J. Rivers, my good friend, Andrew J. Rivers. Would you recognize George Clooney if he came up to you? Yes, I would, but that is not a question about politics, Andrew J. Rivers. I hope that you're having a good time on tour, my man. Diego Vargas, 5742, says millennials and Gen Z are worse off than other generations, unable to afford a house, living with people. Yeah, and that is entirely the fault of the billionaire class and monopolization, which is, again, tied into Republican policies and Republican bullshittery. Sexy Sniper Panda says, do you think they ask themselves why undocumented Irish and Russian immigrants aren't being deported? No, I do not think that they asked that question. I'm so glad that you are here, Andrew J. Rivers. Lady J says, what do you think about bringing the South Africana diaspora? I mean, are you referring to the white people who were not being discriminated against in South Africa that the Trump administration flew over here on a private plane and called them refugees? It's just more fucking racist bullshit from the Trump administration. Diego Vargas says, what can be done about the housing crisis in America? Millennials and Gen Zs live with roommates, etc. So, as far as like policy ideas for solving the housing crisis, There has been a lot written about this. I would refer you to the book Abundance by Ezra Klein. I haven't read it, I just heard a bunch of interviews with them about like the things that are in their book. But yeah, building housing. Everybody that studies this will tell you that building housing is the number one thing. I think that organizing our cities in a way that prioritizes public transportation over cars is another way to maximize the amount of value and housing we were able to get with every acre that we use. I think that making it illegal for private equity to own single-family homes would be a boon to making more housing available to people. Ending tariffs would be another thing because we literally don't have enough wood in this country, and that's why we were importing it from Canada and shit like that. Trump's answer to that is to log all of our national forests, which, that is ours. Like those are our trees, and he's just gonna sell them, so that he can fucking put that money in his pocket, and then we don't have any trees anymore, at Yosemite and shit like that. Alrighty. Let's see here. Polar Express says, won't debate because you're scared to lose. No, Polar Express. I don't debate because debates are stupid. I would much rather have a conversation, and I would much rather actually get into this shit as opposed to just me trying to prove that you're wrong and you trying to prove that I'm wrong. It's dumb. Debates are dumb. It's just tricks to seem as though you are winning, as opposed to being like, hey, why do you think that? Why do I think what I think? Let's get into it. Let's discuss, like maybe we can grow a little bit and learn, et cetera, et cetera. Alrighty, Luke Halvati says, so he can put that money in his pocket. That's not how that shit works, little bro. Luke, you don't know how tall I am. I could be way bigger than you. But yeah, that is exactly how it works. The mechanisms of the government that Trump is currently using is funneling taxpayer dollars into his pocket, either through things like going to Mar-a-Lago and having Secret Service stay at his fucking shitty resorts, and he's charging them 3 times the actual price. His fucking meme coin, selling government favors to the Saudis or the Qataris or the Emiratis. That is exactly what that shit is taking stuff that belongs to America, giving it to other people, and then those people giving him money in exchange. It is just straight corruption, grift, bullshit, and everybody should be fucking furious about this. Selling citizenship. Thank you very much, Loopy Lou. That is another one. No, Dodo. Good to see you again. How do you feel about the Republicans standing up to Trump about the Saudi jet? Until they do something substantive, it's basically just like that. Like they will go out there and they'll say, I don't feel good about this, and then they'll just let him do it. The same shit happened with Pete Hegseth and Signalgate. They were all up in arms about, oh my God, this is a really bad thing. But are they voting to impeach Pete Hegseth? Are they holding Trump's feet to the fire about that and saying you got to replace Pete Hegseth? No, they just went, I don't like this very much, and then they just went back to cowering. Meebo Max says, why do these people need so much money? I don't understand. They have a fucking disease, man. They're sick in the head. They've got like greed sickness where no amount of money is enough for them. It's disgusting. People say these guys have the Midas touch. They're like, oh my God, everything they touch turns to gold and it's incredible. But they forget that the entire fucking point of that story was that Midas's life was ruined because all the people that he loved got turned to fucking gold. It's a curse. It's literally a disease. These people are fucking gross. Something is wrong with their noodles where they're like, I can get $5 million extra and all I gotta do is blow up a couple of teens. Sounds great. Sign me up, buddy. Read Dark Money, everybody. Read Dark Money by Jane Mayer. All right. Raul says majority of them are lining their pockets with money from contributors. That is accurate as well. Let's see here. All right. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Thank you for all the comments and for all the likes and shares and gifts and everything like that. I appreciate any support that you give me and my channel, whether it is the free kind or the paid kind. If you want to contribute financially, you can, but you don't have to. I have a Patreon. I have a store you can buy things at. You can subscribe on the various things. I think I get some money from that, maybe. I don't know. I'm not an expert at that. Yeah, my regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. I often start early because I really like doing these. If you have any questions that I was not able to get to, my DMs are open, and also you can email me from our website, jarrettbernstein.com. That is also where you can find my store, my Patreon, and my schedule of both stand-up and touring and live streaming. And just lastly, my heartfelt plea that you all do the work. You know, we had some really nice numbers today. I hope that what I'm saying is registering with some people here, and you guys will be activated and motivated and start doing the work, you know, because we got to get as many people as we can to do this. I just heard an excellent interview on the Chris Hayes podcast about this woman who studies authoritarian governments. And she's talking about all you need is 3.5% of the population to be activated in order to change, in order to get back to being a democracy. So that's all we got to do, guys. We just got to get 3.5% of this population. So let's do this work. We got to do the work ourselves. We got to convince other people to do the work as well. And the more people that do the work, the less work we will all individually have to do. And that sounds good to me, right? I don't like doing work. Do you like doing work? Let's get lots of people to do the work, and then nobody has to do a lot of work. Alrighty, Mark says, why does politics sometimes feel like the Montagues versus the Capulets? Because the billionaire class wants us to feel that way. And this is my message to everybody out there. The billionaire class is trying to convince you that your enemy is somebody besides them. If you're a Democrat and you're a progressive Democrat, they're going to try to convince you that your enemy is the centrist Democrats. If you're a centrist Democrat, they're going to try to convince you that your enemy is the progressive Democrats. If you're a Republican, they're going to try to convince you that your enemy is Democrats or poor people or brown people or trans kids or immigrants and shit like that. All of that is part of a movement of the billionaire class to redirect attention away from them. They are the ones who are hurting us. They are the ones funding the politicians who are passing laws that fuck us over. It is literally them. Read Dark Money, guys. It is eye-opening. Before I read Dark Money, I was like, I think the billionaire class is doing a lot of really shady shit to fuck us all over. And then I read Dark Money, and I was like, it is worse than I even fucking thought. Holy shit, man. I thought it was like, I thought it was just, like aligned motivations and shit like that, but it's literally like a fucking cabal. It is literally a conspiracy. So yeah, read Dark Money, guys. What's the author's name again? Jane Mayer. I believe it is Mayer. All right. Okay. Oh, Skylar says I look like Joaquin Phoenix. What a nice thing to say. Oh my goodness. Tyro, yeah. No, yeah. That's checking that off of your bingo card. Alrighty. Okay. Angel Baby US say, didn't you used to be Jarrett Berenstain? No, I've always been Berenstain. All right. Let's see here. Any final questions? All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Have an excellent rest of your Thursday. Do the work. Don't be cynical. Hope is part of the resistance. Self-care is part of the resistance. These guys want you to think that resistance is futile. I want you to tell them back, fuck you, you weird-ass dorks. I'm going to do the work. All right. Bye, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.